Good morning, Washington State. This is Amanda Polly from DBHR Supportive Housing, and today we have Patricia Pat Tucker from Advocates for Human Potential here to talk to us about vicarious trauma and self-care. So we all know the importance of self-care, or at least we talk to people about it. Not all of us are so great about administering self-care. I know that I'm not all the time, so we could probably really use all of this really fantastic advice from Ms. Pat, and also what vicarious trauma looks like and how we can avoid those wonderful feelings of burnout. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this on to Ms. Tucker, and I hope that you all enjoy what we're ready to listen to and absorb, and have a wonderful Thursday morning. Pat?
Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's having a good morning thus far. Like Amanda said, I'm going to talk about vicarious trauma and self-care. If you notice, my other tagline is, please secure your oxygen mask first. If you've been on a plane, you all have heard that when they do the safety precautions at the beginning. And why do they tell you to please secure your oxygen mask first? Because if you don't take care of yourself first, you can't take care of somebody else. And so I think that's that goes in line with what we do for a living. We got to take care of ourselves so we can take care of others. And there's a little picture of me and, my information. We won't spend that time on that. So I started off with that which makes us good at and committed to this work is also that which makes it challenging. We get into this field because we care. And it's that care that makes us really good at what we do, but it also makes the work challenging. Again, I'm just, I wanted to make sure that I keep that out there because, we care about people. We want to help people. And a lot of times we forget to take care of ourselves. So we always hear all these terms, right? Many titles, similar concept. Burnout, compassion fatigue, secondary traumatic, vicarious trauma. They're all this, there's a bunch of different words for it, but basically it all boils down to not taking care of yourself. I did a little research because I always think that it's important to look at what the studies show out there. So I'm going to give you a few things out there that basically just really highlights the need for us to take care of ourselves. So basically, the stress scores of palliative care workers are almost twice as high as those of newly widowed women and higher than patients newly diagnosed with breast cancer. This was a study in 1987. So if you're working with people who are coming in with all sorts of stressors and issues, your stress scores are higher than someone who just has been diagnosed with breast cancer, or someone who's just been widowed, meaning she or he has lost the love of their life. So I think that's a pretty good indicator that we're in a stressful workplace. In some of the studies of social workers, 39% of those have reported current symptoms of burnout. 75% have reported experiencing burnout at some point in their career, and I can say that is an actual fact. I would be in that 75%. 73% of social workers have considered leaving their jobs, and this was in 2003. So you're not in an easy field. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I think sometimes we need to take a step back because we know stuff in our brains, but it doesn't always make itself to doing something about it. I see a typo in here. I'm sorry about that. But social workers have higher rates of burnout than other helping professionals. In a British study, so 74% were experiencing high levels of anxiety. 62% of experienced child protective service workers scored high on a measure of emotional exhaustion. So I'm sure that some of you find yourself in some of these studies, or you find yourself dealing with this. Substance abuse, again, 82% reported high psychological stress. 33% were experiencing emotional exhaustion. 36% reported diminished feelings of personal accomplishment. We can be as traumatized as our clients. I think this, and I've actually heard this from a lot of people when I'm training, and this has been all around the country. When I go over and I'm talking to staff, and they on the side tell me, I'm just as messed up as this client, yet I'm trying to help this person, and I'm dealing with the same stuff at home. Can you give me some ideas of how to deal with this on my own? And it's amazing how many times I've heard that. I mean, I'm almost at every conference or every place that I present, and I present a lot. I've heard people say that. In employment, I've heard people say, here we are trying to help people get jobs at living wages, and I'm looking for jobs that pay more than what I'm making, so that means I'm not at a living wage, and I'm struggling just as much as some of the people who I'm helping. So I think it's important to recognize that just because we're the helpers don't mean that we don't have our own issues. So what is vicarious trauma? It's the process through which the therapist inner experience is negatively transformed through empathic engagement through the client's trauma material. So basically, you're really identifying with the trauma of your client. And it could be something that is there. It could also be something that you haven't yet realized is there. So a lot of times I think it catches people by surprise because something can trigger this inside of us when you're working with a person. It may be that they mention something about one of their kids, and that triggers a memory deep back in the back of your brain, and it takes you with them, and you start to feel some of the issues that they're going through. You start to identify with it. So I tried to come up with some of the signs of compassion fatigue, and vicarious trauma. Hypervigilance, making, when you're trying to make sure you are on top of it, making sure that you are really aware of everything. Suspicion about people's motives and behaviors. You ever been in a meeting and somebody said something and you interpret it as being about you? And you just sit there and feel suspicious, like, why are they talking about me, or why did they make that comment? Difficulty sleeping, nightmares, intrusive images, anxiety, numbness, inability to experience pleasure, and the list keeps going. Excessive caregiving on and off the job. For some of us, that the caregiving doesn't stop. So we do this for a living at work, and then we go home, and a lot of us do it with our friends, a lot of us do it with family members, a lot of us do it with strangers on the street. Cynicism. I get to that point where will things ever get better? We've been doing this for so long and I'm seeing the same stuff over and over and over again. Like you just start to get to the point that you feel like nothing matters. Feelings of shame about no longer feeling like the warm, compassionate, and optimistic caregiver that you once was. You start to feel like when I got into this, I had a lot to give, and now I don't have that much to give anymore. Or reactivation of your own issues when all of a sudden you're back dealing with something that you thought you had dealt with, and it rears its ugly head, and you're right back in there. Or angry and irritability, often due to fatigue. Um, those are all signs of compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. And I'm not done yet with the list because it's a long list. Reduce tolerance for what others perceived as others' petty problems. So I know there's perspective, and sometimes people come and they tell you what their problem is, and you're sitting there thinking, that is not a problem. That is just something that you should be able to deal with. Let me tell you about a problem. I got some real problems to deal with. Depression, exhaustion, increased self-criticism, being harder on yourself, expecting you to be Superwoman or Superman, feeling estranged from each other, from others, when you feel like it takes too much energy to get engaged with some people that you used to enjoy being around. Those are all signs, and oh, wait, I'm not done yet. There's more. Challenges to one's cognitive schemas, how one makes sense of the world. So we all have that way how we make sense of the world, and all of a sudden the world doesn't make sense anymore. Things are happening around us, and we just feel like, what did you do with this? It's not the way that I always pictured things. When you start to think that the world's not safe or controllable or just or meaningful, when you feel like there's no place to go that's safe, when you carry the burden of the terrible knowledge about the underbelly of life. Like everybody on this phone call has heard and seen some things that have been done to people or happened to people that you've seen some people at the worst part of their life. And it's hard not to picture and think about that everything out there. I got to protect my kids from this because it's really bad out there. The world is a bad place. That's a sign that you might have some compassion fatigue or vicarious trauma. When you start to look at your life priorities, which can be a good thing, but it also can be disruptive. So let's talk about what contributes to this vicarious trauma. So bearing witness to trauma. So death of a child, young parent, or death due to a traumatic event. You witness that trauma. That can take you into places that make it difficult. I know when I have had to deal with somebody who lost their child, I start to think about my child, how am I going to prevent this from happening? How did this happen? How can we not let this happen again? How is this? And then I start feeling what the parent would feel. That just takes me down a road that really becomes dark, and it's hard to get myself off that road. Powerlessness of the patient parallels that, the caregiver's powerlessness. When you start to feel as powerless as the person you're working with, and you feel like you need to fix it, but you don't feel like you have any power to fix it. That could also take you down that road. Childhood experiences, parentification. What do I mean by that? A lot of times when we're the ones who are the caregivers, we have this notion in our head that we can fix it. We can talk to the person and tell them what's the way to deal with it. And a lot of times, if you're a parent, you know that you don't have all the answers. But somehow, when we are the caregiver, we think we need to have all the answers. We think we need to be able to fix things, fix the problem. And another thing that contributes to vicarious trauma is believing that self-care is less important than the care we provide others. That's a big one. A lot of times we put ourselves last. And if you are sitting there thinking, I have to put myself last. I go to work, I work with people who are traumatized, and then I go home and I put my family first. I do everything for my family. And then if there's time left over, then I might do something for me. It can't be about if there's time left over. You have to make a point to find that time. So vicarious trauma is it's real, people. Don't think that, it's just something that we talk about or something that, we've made up. It's a real thing. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about burnout, because burnout is a little bit different than just vicarious trauma. Burnout is a cognitive emotional reaction to stress. And it's characterized by high levels of exhaustion resulting from the chronic demands made on a person's resources. It's a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed and unable to meet constant demands. So being in your job, I'm sure all of you not only get to see clients who are at their wits' end or in some type of crisis, but you also have other demands on you. You have to be at meetings. You have to get your paperwork done on time. It has to be done properly. You have to deal with things you didn't expect to deal with. Everything's going to be hitting you. And if you're in a typical agency, there's also staff who might be out sick or who might be leaving, which means that creates more stress on you because everybody else has to fill in. So burnout is a real thing. It's there. And if you find yourself in a job or in a place where you are under stress for a long period of time, you could be heading toward burnout if you're not there. So what leads to it? Feeling overwhelmed or overloaded. I used to, when I was doing social work and when I was a case manager or a program manager, I felt overwhelmed and overloaded the majority of the time. I didn't know I was not supposed to feel that way all the time. Working in a role that is physically, mentally, or emotionally demanding a lot of the time. Feeling bored, not feeling sufficiently challenged. Sometimes we get into jobs and we're good at it, but after a while we get bored because we're not challenged anymore. So that could also lead to burnout. Feeling underappreciated. This is a place where managers, if we have managers on the phone, where it makes a difference. And I say this to you, but I also say it to myself. Making sure your staff feel appreciated. A lot of the times I know one of the things I do is I don't say, wow, you did a great job on that. I just assume that the staff person knows, and if I tell them, it just doesn't come naturally to all of us to give people appreciation, because we think, well, they're doing their job. Why should we have to show them appreciation? Well, most times we want to feel appreciated at the job, at the workplace. And I think it's important to feel appreciated. I think that goes a long way for staff. It goes a long way into, ward off that burnout. So it makes a difference. Experiencing compassion fatigue over a long time. So you're just, sometimes you get stuck with a bunch of difficult cases all at once, and it just feels like there's no breather. You go from one case to the next, and they're all at critical, and you're trying to just do this and just keep managing it. That's not healthy for over a long period of time. And isolation. You can feel isolated in a room of people. So I'm not just talking about being physically isolated, mentally isolated, where you isolate yourself or you feel isolated. You feel like nobody's going to get it, or everybody's going to be like, yeah, we're all dealing with that. You just need to deal with it. So finding somebody, that you can converse with about, the feelings and feel like you can actually be heard is important. So what are the signs of burnout? Your body, when you're getting sick a lot, you're getting headaches, your muscles feel tight, you have fatigue, loss of confidence, you're kind of fussy, you're irritable, you're depressed, you're apathetic, you don't care anymore, you find yourselves doing more things, you're restless, you can't sleep at night, you're drinking more, you don't feel like having sex anymore, you stop eating. Well, that's never been my problem. My problem with stress is I eat. So, so loss of appetite or eating more, smoking more. You're starting to have accidents a lot. You're starting to hurt yourself accidentally, tripping over things, dropping stuff. You are negative about things. You can't make a decision. You feel like you can't make a good decision. You worry a lot. All of these are signs of stress and are signs and symptoms that you might be headed towards burnout. So what's the difference between stress and burnout? Because all of our jobs have stress. But how do you know when it's moving toward burnout? So stress is characterized by overengagement. Burnout is characterized by disengagement. When you start to disengage yourself, you start to pull back, you start to feel like there's not enough of you to go around. Stress, overreact to stuff. For burnout, your emotions are blunted. It's like you feel like just, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I do, so why do anything? Stress also produces urgency and hyperactivity, whereas burnout produces helplessness and hopelessness. When you feel like there's just not enough that you can do to make this issue or help. You're dealing with homelessness. And it feels like the more people you help, the more people that are lined up at the door. And you get to that point of, what can we possibly do? Stress is a loss of energy. Burnout is a loss of motivation, ideals, and hope. When you start to feel like when you wake up and you're not motivated to go to work, you're thinking about all the things that you could possibly do to avoid work. That's a sign that you may be heading toward burnout. Stress leads to anxiety disorders. So you start to feel anxious about things. Everything, makes you feel anxious. But burnout, you detach and you start to become depressed. So you start to detach yourself because your mind is telling you that this is too much, and so you detach so you don't feel it as much. You start to get some depression moving in. That's a sign of burnout. For stress, the primary damage is physical. So when I get overstressed, I start to have stomach issues. Things that, normally that I would eat start to bother my stomach. I start to get lots of indigestion or heartburn or, things that just, I used to deal with, but now for some reason I'm stressed. It's starting to bother me. For burnout, the primary damage is emotional. When in your head, you can't get yourself right. You can't figure out what to do, how to do it, when to do it, or you just don't have the energy to do it. Stress may kill you prematurely. Burnout may make life seem not worth living. These are some pretty serious things. So I'm going through all of this, and we will get to a point where we talk about how to deal with some of this. And I do want you to know, and I should have said this, but I will take questions at any point. So please, if you have questions or anything, don't hesitate to either say something or write a note so that somebody lets me know that there's a question. So how do we address vicarious trauma? First, you need to be aware of your own needs, your own limits, your own emotions, and your own resources. So the A in the ABCs of addressing vicarious trauma is awareness. The B is balance of work and play, taking care of others and taking care of yourself. They should be balanced. So if you find yourself leaning more towards taking care of others, then you don't have balance. There needs to be an equal amount of time in there for taking care of yourself. And I say that, and people say, yeah, I know. And I'm just as guilty as everybody else. I will find ways to do for others and just think, at some point I'll take it for myself. And what usually happens is I get really sick and I'm forced to be at home in bed, and I'm like, okay, so if I had taken care of others, I probably wouldn't have gotten to that point of being sick and in bed. But now my body's saying, you got to take a break. There's no choice here. The C is connection to oneself, others, and to something larger, whatever that means for you. But you need to connect with others, and especially with yourself. That's the only way you can address vicarious trauma is by connecting with yourself, and however you do that. So we all do it in different ways. Anybody out there have any other ideas or ways that they deal with vicarious trauma? I'm interested because I know there's lots of ways to deal with it. Anybody have anything they would like to share?
I do, Pat.
Yeah.
I paint. I started painting. I didn't even know how to do it. I just one day decided that I wanted to learn how to put colors on canvas, and I was doing direct service, and I was actually experiencing a lot of burnout and compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma, everything that you said applied to me probably 110%. And so I started painting, and it relieved a lot of stress. It was pretty impressive.
Wow, excellent.
It worked out great for me.
Excellent. That's a good thing to do, because you can give yourself some time. You're doing something enjoyable, and it requires you to focus on it, and means you're not focusing on everything else. That's excellent. One of the things I do, and I don't do it enough, is I do Zumba, and people laugh at me because Zumba, for those who don't know, it's a workout where it's dancing to music, but you have a teacher who's up there showing you the moves. So you get a good workout, you get to dance, and when I'm doing Zumba, I make lots of noise. I scream, I yell, I keep people in the room, engaged and motivated. But for me, it's a way to get some of that energy out. And almost at every Zumba class, I ask people to take at least 10 seconds and just scream to get some of that out of you, just to do, to just let it go. And that's helped me a lot to deal with, just some of the stressors.
I think that's fantastic. Teresa Daly agrees with you. Dancing seems to help her as well. And then Rachel Hager reports that creating something definitely helps, and that it helps combat the loss of power and control. So we have a lot of people with like
absolutely.
Minds.
The thing is that when we find something that helps, we have to make it a point to continue to do it. And so that's, we addressing vicarious trauma you shouldn't wait until you're in the thick of things and go, oh, wait, I need to take care of myself. You should be doing it on a regular basis. And that's the hard part for a lot of us.
It is. And, we have people in here who are saying that they've changed jobs, and it changed their world. That's from Miss Carrie. And then Beverly reports that they have people at work that they feel are safe to talk to. So when they start to stress, as self-care, hot tubs, visiting the ocean, singing karaoke. Right on, Beverly. I love karaoke. And then Sarah says that she has a counselor that she gets to talk to, which is great, because sometimes you need that impartial, objective voice.
Absolutely.
Right. And so journaling, meditation for Teresa and Greg, mindfulness, that is so important. Mindfulness is incredibly important, because sometimes we just get so wrapped up in everything that's going on with the participants that we're serving. And then allowing good bits to come in, not letting those shiny moments be dulled down by what's going on around us. Peer support is vital to Rachel. Prayer for Teresa. Exercise. For some people, like you mentioned with the dancing, but, getting it out of your system, letting your muscles get that tension out. And then yoga. Of course, yoga is wonderful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, everybody agrees. The physical side of things really seems to help, relieve that stress. As much as, we're tired when we get off of work, that need is there.
Yes, absolutely. The need is there. And, hopefully, and I have a few more things in line to give you to do. But it's important that I think the hardest time for me is the awareness. By the time I become aware that I am dealing with vicarious trauma, sometimes I'm in the thick of it. And so I need to work on becoming aware quicker. And so that's one of the places that I'm working at, is trying to become more aware. A lot of times my family lets me know that something's not right because they'll say you're kind of moody and you're snapping at everybody. Like you don't have any patience like you usually do. And then I stop and I think, and then I'm like, yeah. And then later I'm like, yeah, they're right. I don't have it. And I'm in the middle of it already. And so my goal is to try to become aware quicker. I've asked my family for support. So instead of waiting until I'm really grumpy and not wanting to deal with anything, to kind of, when they first start to see it, to say something to me. Because I have a hard time recognizing it and right away. It just doesn't. It's not there yet. I thought this was a great quote. Human compassion is equal to human cruelty, and it is up to each of us to tip the balance. By Alice Walker. I think that's crucial. It's important for us to have balance, and we have control over it. That's the thing in some cases a change of job might be necessary, especially if you're at an agency where there's a ton of turnover and you always are overworked and you always are being called on to do more, and there's no way out and you can't see an end in sight. Maybe it's time for a new job. And that's how you tip the balance. Tipping the balance could also be going to yoga. Tipping the balance could be taking some time out for yourself, even if it's for an hour every weekend. And it's your time. It's just your time where the kids, the family, all the other stuff, you put it on hold, you take that time for yourself. We can control that balance, or we have to control it, or we end up, hurting ourselves, and when I say hurting ourselves emotionally is what I'm talking about. So it's important to know that you have some control over the balance. So one of the things you can do to refuel yourself or to make things better is ask for help when you need it. I say that, and I am one of the persons on this call that has a hard time asking for help. And I know other people have a hard time asking for help. But it's important when you need help that you can ask for it. And whether it's a supervisor or another peer, or sometimes it could be a person who's doesn't even work with you, that has a level head and can just help you to think things through. We need to be able to ask for help. We also need to create an organizational climate that encourages self-care. Some organizations are better at this than others, but organizations can help with this. They could make time to, when I meet with the people who I supervise, we just don't talk about work. Always at the end of the conversation, I'm asking them, what are you doing that's fun in life? What are you doing that, outside of work that's really keeping you going? What are your plans for the weekend? What are you going to do fun this weekend? Or what are you going to do to get yourself, rejuvenated? I'm always asking that question as a supervisor of my staff. And my supervisor has started asking me those kind of questions, which I think makes a big difference when your agency or your organization sees you more than just a worker. They see you as a person, and they encourage you to do self-care. Those are critical things. And if you feel like your organization is not encouraging self-care, that's something that, you can talk to your supervisor about. And you can say, I went on, there was this amazing webinar done by this woman named Pat Tucker, and she said that organizations should encourage self-care, and I want us to do that here. And, one of the things that we can do is, maybe in meetings, we can take some time toward the end of the meeting to talk about stuff that is outside of work, even if it's just for a few minutes, just showing that we are more than just that worker. We should be having lives outside of work. Another one is to make self-care a routine, not an infrequent occurrence. So if you don't make it a routine, then you're not taking care of yourself. So making it a routine, making it something you do on a regular basis. I know for me, when I could be doing Zumba and I'm doing great, but when things get really stressed, guess what takes a back seat? And what usually ends up happening is I put other things in place and I find reasons not to go to Zumba. And that's not a good thing. That, for me, is a sign that I'm not keeping self-care as a routine. I'm starting to put it, I'm going to take care of my father-in-law. I'm going to take care of my sister. I'm going to take care. All of a sudden, all of these things start to jump in there, and my self-care goes on the back burner. That's not good for me. So some of these you've already said. So for psychologically, the ways to refuel yourself, journal writing. If you like writing, or if that's something, for a lot of people that works, sharing your feelings with others, sharing your feelings with maybe finding a coworker or somebody who there's a way that you can share and feel comfortable sharing. Vent your emotions in safe ways, throwing ice cubes, play sad music. Find a way to get that out. Let the emotions out. And visualize a safe and nurturing place and visit it regularly. So you can just picture that beach with the sand and you lying on the beach with your book and just everybody's coming over asking if you want anything, a glass of iced water, glass of iced tea. And if that's your place, if that's what you feel is safe and nurturing, go there. Try to go there every day. Take a few minutes and just go there and take care of yourself. Refuel yourself. Use affirmations to counter negative thinking. I may not be perfect, but I'm perfectly fine. My needs and feelings count too. I will treat myself as kindly as I treat others. A lot of times I see staff who will go out of their ways to do things for the clients, but and tell the client, don't be so hard on yourself. You're doing the best you can, but they do not tell themselves that. They will be beating themselves up. I should have done this. I should have done that. What about this? I didn't do enough. We need to be treating ourselves just as we treat others. We need to be kind to ourselves, forgiving. I will respond to myself with compassion. Doesn't cost a lot to visualize that, to talk to yourself. Sometimes, I've had staff who wrote, stuff on a piece of paper and put it up in their office so they have a reminder all the time. Be kind to myself. One person had that written down, and I thought, that's cool. And she was like, yeah, every time I get to a place where I'm being hard on myself, I look at that and I'm like, oh yeah, be kind to yourself. And it's just a visual reminder to not not get so caught up on everything and to give yourself a break sometimes. Don't beat yourself up. Physically refueling could be a massage, which sounds really good about right now. As for comforting touch, so you know, if you're a kind of person who enjoys being touched, you can ask somebody for a hug that you feel comfortable with, or you could just ask for somebody to just hold hands for a second or a minute. Um, don't have the none should exercise. It, walking, playing, walking doesn't take that much. At work, I will get up from my desk. I try my best to do it every hour, but I don't always succeed. But at least 4 to 5 times a day, I get up and I walk away from my desk for just a couple of minutes. I will just walk. I'll go walk through the hallways and come back. Sometimes that can just help me immensely, especially if I'm just sitting there and I feel like the mouse in the wheel. I'm just going in circles and I need to take a little space, a little time out. Create a healing or sacred space in your office and at home where you can go to. And you could do it in your desk, you could do it in a cubicle, you could do it any place. Sometimes, that healing and sacred space could be outside on a park bench where you could just go and sit for a few minutes. At home, you need to have a space where you can go and have a space. Practice radical self-care. What I mean by that is just sometimes just splurge on yourself. If something makes you feel good, try to do it every now and then where you're just like, you know what? I need to do this for me, and I'm going to do it. And one of the other ones is creating simple pleasures. Trying to find simple pleasures and things that we sometimes take for granted can help physically. Socially, make time for pleasing social activities. It helps to be around others. If you find yourself not wanting to be around others, that should be a sign something's not right, especially if you used to be around people and you find yourself not wanting to be around them. That should be a warning, and you should be figuring out a way to have some type of social activities. Get out and try new things. Like Amanda said, she didn't know how to paint. She just thought she would try it, and it's going well for her. For me, I signed up for a woodcraft class. I'm making stuff with wood. I never in my life thought I would be in a place voluntarily playing with wood and trying to make something. But I do that class 2 times a week now in the evenings. And for those 3 hours, I'm not thinking about work. I'm not thinking about what I need to do. I'm actually thinking about a piece of wood and how it's going to look when I'm done with it and what's my next step. Should I be sanding or should I be planing? That's a time out for me, and that feels good. Ask a friend to just listen for 15 minutes. And the just listen part is important because you don't necessarily need a friend to tell you what to do or how to do it or when to do something. You just need somebody to listen for 15 minutes, and you can just put it all out there, and that helps a lot. Gather with kindred spirits. Church for some people, support groups, clubs, other organizations. It's important to have that camaraderie. We need that as people. We need to do something socially with people, especially if, that's normally how you operate. We need, again, more things on the social side. Connect with people. If you find yourself separating off from your family and friends and the people you used to be with, do some serious thinking about why you're doing that. Get involved with social activism and community organizing. If that's your thing, or if that's something that interests you, or if you're feeling hopeless about the state, how much homelessness there is, get out and do something. Don't just sit there and fester in it. Maybe it's time to get out there and do something. Join a support group. See if others at work would like to start a self-care support group. You can do that. You can start a group at your work where a few of you get together, and you can design it the way you guys want it and make it be what you want it to be, but you can sit there and talk about stuff and let it out, or you can do something else. You can make it an art group. You can make it a walking group. I mean, you can do so many other things. And a lot of times it helps because if you do it as a group, there's more pressure to do it. I have a friend in Zumba. She is always texting me, "Are you coming to class? Why aren't you coming to class? You need to be here." I need that social. I need that. I need somebody to hold me accountable and say, "What the heck are you doing? You haven't been here in a while. You need to get your butt here." That helps to have somebody who's looking out for you. Spiritually. So in response to the 3 C's, I didn't cause it, I can't change it, and I can't control it. Try the 3 P's. Pause, pray, and proceed. And I said pray, even though not everybody prays, but you can meditate on it, you can think about it, whatever gets you through it, but try to take some control over it. Engage in a spiritual practice that is meaningful to you, whatever that is. For me, spiritual practice is when I just am taking some time to just be with myself and to just think about things I want to do, or things that I may want to try out, or things that work for me. And create rituals that speak to you. What are some of the rituals that speak to you, that say, that would be a good thing to do on a regular basis? Walk in nature. Do whatever brings you closer to something bigger than yourself. Sometimes we need to take off our blinders. The blinders that you have on, that all you can see is what's in front of you. Sometimes we got to get a little broader and look at things a little bit differently and look at the bigger picture. Because that sometimes can take you outside of where you found yourself stuck at. Read inspirational materials. Put inspirational quotes, pictures, or images around you. Things that inspire you. I have a picture of my daughter on my desk. And when things get really tough, I look at that picture and I'm like, okay, I see why I'm working hard. I understand it. And I also remember that I want to take care of myself to be around for her. So that's my motivation. That's my inspiration. Some other things you can do. Develop realistic expectations for self and employees. We're super people, right? We could do everything. That's not realistic. We can only do everything for a little bit, and then it all falls apart. So maybe having some realistic expectations for yourself and others. I mean, because the people around you, I know people who send me an email, and if I do not respond within 15 minutes, they're sending me another one. That's not a realistic expectation to have of me because it's your emergency, it doesn't make it my emergency. And maybe I need a little bit more time replying to that email. So a lot of times we are unrealistic in our expectations for ourselves and others. If possible, set aside some time in staff meetings to allow people to share their feelings. And that gets that, I know some people don't like it. And some people feel like, we're here to do a job and, talk about your feelings elsewhere. So that may not be popular at every place, but in some places that may be an okay thing to do if people are okay with that. If not, maybe you set up your own group like we talked about before. Don't expect quick fixes. A lot of us are dealing with our own trauma. And that trauma comes from way back when. And we get into this job for a reason. And a lot of times that reason is because we've experienced some of the things that the people we're working with are experiencing. Well, we have our own trauma. And that trauma has been there for a while. And we can't just think that, I'm going to start taking time for myself once a week and everything will be great. You didn't get to this point overnight. You're not going to fix it overnight. Give yourself some time. Don't put pressure on yourself to fix it right away. It takes time. It's like with our clients. They walk in the door and they want everything right now. Let's do it. And you think, well, we didn't get to this point and it's going to take time. There's lots of things that need to happen before we can get to that point of fixing this. It can't be that quick. And a lot of times it's important for us to make sure we give ourselves adequate time to deal with stuff. And this is one of those things that I think is important. If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. So I really wanted to save some time for people to talk. So I don't know if there's a way for people to come off of mute or to have a dialogue, but I wanted to have some time in this for people to talk about some of the ways that they're either coping with stress or coping with vicarious trauma, or some of the ideas that you have that your organization might be able to incorporate, some things you found that work better than others. So I was hoping we could actually have a dialogue.
I think that if people raise their hands, we might be able to pull them off of mute one at a time, possibly.
Okay. Anybody want to be the first to get the ball rolling?
Or they can send me a private message through the chat, and I can pull them off of mute that way, too. That might be a possibility as well. Let's see here. I am. Okay, Beverly, I think I see your hand raised. Goodness. Let's see.
I didn't mean to give you a challenge, Amanda. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I enjoy a good challenge. So give me just a quick second, and I am just going to take a look here and make sure that my question pane is being a pain. Pun. And I am just going to make sure that I'm not pulling anybody off of mute that doesn't want to be off of mute. I think that's my biggest fear here. And I keep having these fantastic little hands pop up on the question thing, but I'm not seeing any brand new questions. So it's kind of throwing me for a loop.
Okay.
Have to excuse me. I'm working on it. I apologize, you guys. So I am, let's see.
Oh, somebody did write a question or write something down. I think a really important thing is learning personal and emotional boundaries. Otherwise, all of the self-care stuff is just trying to fill a bucket with holes in it. Your efforts won't fill you up. I totally agree that having personal and emotional boundaries is important. Um, and when we get into boundaries, that's for some people that's a hard one because not everybody's clear of what boundaries are. So
Or what they're supposed to look like.
Or what they're supposed to look like. So boundaries are things that one of the ways I tell people, if it's a good boundary, you're not embarrassed to tell people. If you ever do something at work or ever do something with the client or ever do something that you're like, I'm not going to tell anybody about that, you might have crossed the boundary. But
somebody asked if we can print these slides for review. So I would say yes. Yes, we can.
Of course.
Sorry. Yep.
Well, and you have, and I think there's a handout. The handout is there, so feel free to print it off and use it as you will. I'm just going through looking at some of the questions. Any other thoughts? Anybody have any other? I mean, I put a lot in there, but I also okay. Let me ask a very specific question. At your organization, how many of you feel like your organization pays attention to self-care?
Oh, we can make a poll. You want to see if I can make a poll? Can I make a poll?
Well, or people can just say, people who don't feel like it can just write in the chat box. No, I mean, I'm not trying to point anybody out. Sometimes agencies don't pay attention to self-care, even though we're in the caring field.
It's true. No, it's 100% true, and that's what can directly, relate to vicarious trauma and self-care issues, burnout, compassion fatigue with all of our people.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're being told, hey, you have to be compassionate and understanding and articulate with the people that you're serving, but do it really quickly and make sure that you're on time and that you stay late and that you work really hard and take that half-hour lunch. So it can be really difficult.
And come in if you're needed, and if there's an emergency, we expect you to be here. And, I know you have a personal life, but this job is important.
And I know your kids are sick, but sorry, you're going to get written up for that. And, because this is the world that we live in. And it can be really difficult. But sometimes you get into those really great agencies, too, at the same time, who are just really fantastic about wrapping you up in that wonderful comfort, and teaching you about self-care and being really good. And, I was really lucky to work for a company that was like that, who really advocated self-care. And I remember I forgot to give my son his medication, and it was like my very first day of training, and I was mortified. And I had to tell my boss, I have to go. My kid's teacher just called, and I'll be right back. And I was really scared. And he was like, go, kids first. And I was like, oh, okay. Totally flabbergasted. But it was perfect. It was amazing, just as it should have been. And that doesn't always happen. And we need to make sure that we acknowledge that for, our providers and our agencies and of course, our case managers who are out there on the ground working their behinds off.
Right. And I think another thing for that, if your agency is not, if you don't feel like your agency is one of those places that is preaching self or self-care or making sure that the staff, it's something you can take it to your supervisor and say, here's something that I thought we should work on. I think we can do a better job in this area. would you mind if, maybe we bring this up in meetings? When we have meetings, we could just spend 5-10 minutes on it, talking about ways that we can be more about self-care and, get people involved in having that discussion.
Pat, there's a really good question, or actually comment, really. Matthew said there is often discussion about self-care, but it is often undermined by productivity demands. I know that I've experienced that in the past. I wonder how many people here experience that are on the call right now.
No, that is a good question and a good comment, and it's true. Some agencies do a good job talking about self-care, then they don't do a good job in actually making sure that people do it. Like, it's all talk, and you still have things that you need to get done. I think in those situations, and I can say this because I've been a manager, I've also overseen all of the operations, and I know when doing a proposal, you put in what you think your staff can do in those proposals, and because you want a proposal, you want to get the money to do this work, and sometimes you stretch out your staff, and sometimes it might require staff talking to whoever's doing these proposals and saying, it's too much. This is, it's too much on my plate right now. And it's been too much for a while. I don't think I'm the only one that's feeling like it's too much. Can we take a look at this? Because, I like this place and I want to stay here. I want to be here. I want to do the best job I can. But my plate is really full. My caseload is 80 on a good day. and that's not doable in the long run.
Yeah. Beverly has a really good comment in here, and I was wondering, you wanted to have a discussion, and I was thinking I think everybody would really benefit from what she has to say. She was commenting about her agency giving them a grant for self-care for $300. Do you, Beverly, if you're still on and active, I'm going to take you off of mute. Would you like to and have you discuss with us what that looks like, and for a few minutes, if that's okay? So I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. All right, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, you're off mute now.
So at the beginning or at the end of last year, our agency got a grant from the state, and it was to be put towards retention, being able to keep us working in social services longer. And so my agency came up with a self-care grant of $325 after taxes. It's about $300. And they will, all you have to do is write up a little thing saying, I'd like to go to the ocean for a day, and I feel that this will help me recenter myself. You submit it to your supervisor, they sign it, our site director signs it, gets sent off to corporate, and the check is there, they're saying about 30 days.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's an excellent idea. Here's my thing that I try to tell to agencies, and keeping your good staff is important, and losing your good staff costs the company money and time. So it helps agencies if they could just retain their people. It's worth $300 to retain a good staff person, because guess what? When that good staff person leaves, in your time and energy to find somebody else to take their place, and the burnout that it's going to cause the other staff around trying to fill in and do that person's work, you're going to lose more than $300 in time and money just trying to refill a position. So keep your good staff by, putting in that little cost. I think that's an excellent idea, and I would encourage other agencies to look at something like that?
Other
Look at,
things,
go ahead.
sorry. I was going to say other things that they've done in the past is they have regular barbecues. We've gone skating as staff. Um, so we're encouraged to take, and anytime we meet with supervisors, it's what are you doing for self-care, especially if it's a hard client. So I'm on a WISE team, so wraparound intensive
Okay.
services. So we really get some pretty heavy duty stuff. And
Yes.
but we have a massage chair in the office that they got, and we can go into that room and sit in the massage chair and get a massage if we're feeling stressed at the office.
Wow. I want to come work with you guys.
You know, if you hire on,
That
I
would.
get a bonus.
No, that's what self-care looks like. That's what an
You know,
agency
Beverly, this
that
is
does self-care
recorded.
looks like.
This is recorded?
Which is, yeah, it is recorded, but it's
Yes,
still
I
a good
was just
thing.
being silly.
Oh, okay.
But no, it's that's what self-care should look like at an agency. And so I think some of those on the phone who don't feel like their agency is, either they're just talking the talk. If you want them to walk the walk, go in there with ideas. Go in there and talk about stuff. Recommend, why don't we do some things as teams? um it doesn't cost a lot to do some things. I mean, one we went bowling once. Whoever wanted to go bowling, we went bowling. And I found money to pay for it for the staff to go. At people still had to buy beverages and other things, but we just paid for a few lanes and bowled and acted crazy and just let off some steam. That's what self-care looks like. So, I'm going to challenge all of you who do not feel like your agency is walking the walk to go in there and talk to a supervisor and say, we need to do a better job on self-care. I have a couple of ideas, but I also want to make it a priority for all of us. So, can we talk about this some more? Can we put this on the agenda? That's your challenge, people. Are there any other questions? Any other thoughts? I'm not going to hold you on the phone and hold you hostage. If you don't have any other questions or thoughts, I hope that, there were some things that you could take away from this, that, the struggle is real, but there's also real solutions out there, and there are ways to deal with this, but it requires effort on your end, and it may require you to reach out to others. It may require for you, if your supervisors are not open to it, it may require you finding a way to make it work for you. There's one person who works at my agency, and she said, I'm never going to be able to retire. So I'm just going to take a lot of little vacations throughout every year. Every 6 months, I'll take a vacation for a week or something. Whether I go anywhere or not, I'm going to take all my time, and I'm not going to leave any of my time on the table. And I'm going to take that time for myself. And I think, that works for her. That's a great idea. If you're looking at your benefits, look at your benefits package. Is there a time in there? Can you take a sabbatical? How many days off do you get? Are they all in the same bucket? So you can take a day here and a day there to rejuvenate. Find ways to make it happen, people. Take care of yourself so that you can be there to take care of others. Make it a priority. And if there are no other questions, I'm going to end with that as my send off. You got to make time for yourself. Thank you.
Pat, thank you so much for your presentation today. It hit home for me, and I'm not even doing direct service anymore. So I think that's a lesson for all of us, whether you're serving directly or not, to remember to take care of ourselves, to make sure that we're listening internally to our own needs, and to make sure that we're doing a good job at taking care of number one in order to be able to utilize what we do as a living and take care of others properly. So thanks a lot, Pat. Thank you, Washington State, for joining us on our call today. We'll get this email out to you with a link for the recording as well as the PDF slides. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to DBHR, and we will be happy to answer anything that we can for you. Thanks again, and have a very, very good rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.